Don't stay stuck. 3 recovery hacks after a narcissist. If you feel exhausted from mentally replaying every conversation, every contradiction, and every unanswered question from your relationship with a narcissist, if you are genuinely tired of revisiting the same why and how without ever arriving at peace, this discussion is for you. What many survivors describe is not reflection, but a relentless loop that seems impossible to exit. Psychologists refer to this pattern as rumination, and while it often feels purposeful, it is one of the most effective ways trauma keeps itself alive. Understanding why this happens and how to interrupt it can be the difference between remaining psychologically tethered to the past and finally beginning to feel whole again. Rumination is frequently misunderstood, even by those experiencing it. People are often told to stop overthinking as if it were a simple choice, as if the mind could be switched off on command. Clinical psychology tells us otherwise. After narcissistic abuse, the brain becomes hyper-focused on threat analysis. Your mind is not replaying events because it enjoys the pain. It is searching for safety, coherence, and control. The relationship did not make sense, and the nervous system is still trying to resolve that unpredictability. Unfortunately, rumination does not provide resolution. Instead, it repeatedly reactivates the emotional and physiological state you were in when the harm occurred, pulling your body back into danger even when you are objectively safe. This is why rumination feels so consuming. You may be sitting on your couch, but your nervous system is back in the argument, the dismissal, the moment your reality was denied. Psychologists explain that memory is not stored as a neutral recording. It is stored with emotional and bodily cues. Each time you replay the story, your brain releases the same stress hormones that were present during the original experience. What feels like processing is often re-traumatization. The mind insists that if you can just analyze the situation one more time, if you can just explain it more clearly, something will finally click. Yet survivors quickly discover that even when they find the perfect words in their head, the outcome never changes. The narcissistic dynamic remains intact, and the mind remains unsatisfied. From a therapeutic standpoint, it is essential to distinguish rumination from true psychological processing. Rumination is problem-focused and circular. It asks endless questions about what happened and why, without moving toward integration or relief. Healthy processing, on the other hand, is forward-facing. It explores how the experience affected you, what it taught your nervous system, and what boundaries or skills will protect you moving forward. Psychologists emphasize that deep processing requires containment and support. Attempting to do this work alone often leads the mind straight back into the spiral. This is why modalities like therapy or trauma-informed coaching are so effective. They provide structure, regulation, and a way out of the loop. In the absence of structured support, the most helpful interventions are not analytical but interruptive. The goal is not to solve the thought, but to disengage from it. Simple grounding techniques can be surprisingly powerful when practiced consistently. Deep breathing, sensory awareness, or even small physical cues can pull the nervous system back into the present moment. Some clinicians recommend tactile interruptions, such as snapping a rubber band on the wrist, not as punishment, but as a brief sensory anchor. That moment of physical sensation creates a pause, and in that pause, you regain choice. Instead of being swept into the spiral, you can decide how to redirect your attention. It is important to acknowledge that this work takes time and repetition. Rumination can feel almost addictive because it temporarily creates the illusion of control. Psychologically, your brain has learned that vigilance once kept you safe, so it resists letting go. Each time you interrupt the cycle, however, you weaken that association. Over time, the nervous system learns that safety does not come from revisiting the trauma, but from staying present. This is where real healing begins, not in understanding the narcissist better, but in teaching your body that the threat has passed. Another critical shift involves learning to listen to the body rather than the story. Many people are disconnected from their physical sensations unless pain becomes unbearable. Trauma-informed psychology teaches that the body often communicates distress long before the mind can articulate it. During moments of rumination, Instead of following the narrative, you can gently redirect your attention inward. Notice what is happening physically. Is there tightness in your chest? A flutter in your stomach? A heaviness in your shoulders? Naming these sensations without judgment allows them to move rather than remain stuck. This practice can feel uncomfortable at first, especially for those who learn to survive by intellectualizing or avoiding emotion. The instinct to distract or suppress is understandable. It once served a purpose. But avoidance keeps the nervous system on high alert. When you stay present with bodily sensations without attaching them to a story, you give your system the opportunity to release what it has been holding. Psychologists describe this as somatic processing, and it is one of the most effective ways to reduce trauma-related rumination. The body finally receives the message that it does not have to stay braced for impact. Ultimately, breaking free from rumination is not about discipline or willpower. It is about understanding that your mind is doing its best to protect you using outdated strategies. By interrupting the loop, grounding in the present, and shifting awareness to the body, you begin to retrain your nervous system. The past loses its grip not because you fully understand it, but because your body learns that it no longer needs to relive it. And that is where peace, slowly and steadily, becomes possible. There is a quiet but powerful shift that happens when you allow yourself to lean into your feelings rather than immediately trying to escape them. Even doing this for a minute or two can make a meaningful difference. You can set a timer if that helps create a sense of safety and containment. What many people discover, often to their surprise, is that when emotions are fully felt in the body, they begin to move. They soften, change, and release. This is very different from what happens when you stay locked in the story of what happened. The story keeps emotions frozen in place. It traps them in repetition, causing the same distressing feelings to intensify each time the narrative is replayed. Psychologically, this makes perfect sense. Emotions are not static states. They are responses designed to rise, deliver information, and then pass. Thoughts, however, can keep emotions artificially alive. Think about anger as an example. The more you mentally revisit the event that triggered it, the angrier you become. Sadness works the same way. Each replay feeds the emotional fire, reinforcing the neural pathways associated with pain and distress. This is why rumination feels so exhausting and yet so difficult to stop. You are not just remembering the pain, you are actively recreating it. The goal, however, is not to ignore or suppress big emotions. Those feelings are present for a reason, and dismissing them often leads to deeper problems later on. What trauma-informed psychology encourages instead is honoring the emotion without attaching it to a narrative. This means acknowledging what you feel: sadness, anger, grief, fear, while gently letting go of the mental story that explains or justifies it. When you do this, you shift from a cognitive loop into an embodied experience. From that grounded place, true healing becomes possible. You are no longer trying to think your way out of pain. You are allowing your nervous system to complete what it could not do during the relationship. When you create space to fully experience what is happening in your body, you open the door to genuine transformation. This is where recovery stops being about understanding the narcissist and starts being about reconnecting with yourself. The endless mental loop begins to loosen its grip, not because you forced it to stop, but because your system no longer needs it to feel safe. From here, the next foundational step is developing a mindfulness practice. Many people are understandably skeptical at this point. Mindfulness and meditation are often presented as universal solutions prescribed for nearly every emotional struggle. That can make them feel generic or even dismissive. However, the research supporting mindfulness, particularly for emotional regulation and trauma recovery, is both extensive and compelling. Regular mindfulness practice has been shown to improve focus, reduce anxiety and depression, and strengthen impulse control. While it is not a cure-all, it is a powerful tool in healing from toxic and narcissistic relationships. One of the most important things to understand is that you do not need to be a meditation expert to benefit. In fact, starting with mindfulness rather than formal meditation is often more accessible. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the moment, aware of what is happening both internally and externally, without judgment and without getting pulled into interpretation or story. It is about anchoring yourself in the here and now. Meditation, by contrast, is a more structured practice aimed at quieting the mind and cultivating deeper states of calm and awareness. You can think of meditation as training a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger and more natural it becomes. For many people, the idea of sitting still and not thinking for extended periods feels unrealistic, especially after narcissistic abuse, when the mind has been trained to stay hyper-alert. This is why mindfulness is such a helpful entry point. It is gentle and flexible. It might look like taking a few slow breaths and noticing how the air feels as it enters and leaves your body. It might involve pausing to observe your surroundings, the texture of the room, the sounds around you, the weight of your body in the chair, without narrating or analyzing the experience. Each time you do this, you are teaching your brain to disengage from rumination and reorient to the present. If you decide to explore meditation more deeply, there are many tools available that can provide structure and motivation. Some people benefit from guided apps or biofeedback devices that offer real-time insight into mental states during meditation. These tools can make the practice feel more engaging and tangible, especially for those who struggle with consistency. What matters most, however, is not the method, but the commitment. Meditation does require regular practice, but research shows that benefits can appear relatively quickly. This is not something that demands years of effort before you see results. A practical approach is to commit to a short, defined period, such as 2 weeks, and observe what changes. Keeping a journal during this time can be especially helpful. Writing down how your thoughts, emotions, and body responses shift over time allows you to see progress that might otherwise go unnoticed. This process reinforces the sense that healing is happening, even when it feels slow. Together, these practices form a strong foundation for recovery. They help interrupt rumination, restore a sense of agency, and create space for emotional integration. That said, healing becomes significantly more challenging if a narcissist is still actively present in your life. Ongoing exposure can continually re-trigger old patterns, making progress feel fragile. While healing is still possible under these conditions, it often requires additional boundaries and strategies to protect your mental and emotional space. Ultimately, recovery from narcissistic abuse is not about forcing yourself to move on. It is about gently retraining your mind and body to recognize safety, presence, and self-trust again. When you stop feeding the story and start listening to your inner experience, you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that were overshadowed by the relationship. That reclamation is where lasting change truly begins.